Okay. Good evening, everyone. We've got a little um, visit from my daughter, uh, and so hope that was okay. I am home this evening recording, and we're have a really awesome night. This is just to give us a little review of where we are. We're in the sixth week of our third course, the path of the Bodhisattva, emptiness and compassion. And we really spent the first 4 weeks of this course laying out the view of what the Bodhisattva is, what bodhicitta, the heart mind of awakening in this relational space of many beings is, and also getting into some of the traps or challenges that come up along that path, talking about idiot compassion and spiritual bypassing. And in the second half of this course, we're getting into the paramitas, the transcendent actions, and also a couple of classic Indo-Tibetan Buddhist texts, working with Shantideva's text. And tonight we are working with one of my favorite texts, and we have our third guest lecture in the online Buddhist Studies series this year, and it's one of my favorite texts. It's one of my favorite people in the Dharma, which is Dr. Shante Paradigm Smalls is joining us. And I'm going to just read Dr. Smalls' bio and then let them take it away for a while. And I'm really excited. So Dr. Shante Paradigm Smalls is a teacher and student in the Shambhala school of Vajrayana, or Tibetan Buddhism. Shante began studying and practicing Buddhism at age 17 and has practiced in Zen, SGI, and the Shambhala communities. Shante, began on the teaching path in 2009, was authorized in the Shambhala tradition to teach meditation and Buddha Dharma in 2015. Dr. Smalls teaches Dharma and meditation in a wide variety of locations, including Dharma centers, conferences, corporations, colleges, universities. Shante is focused on the healing impact of contemplation and meditation in Black communities, people of color communities, LGBTQ plus communities, and prison and recovery communities. Shante is a teacher on the app called Liberation and teaches regularly in Shambhala's program, the weekly Dharma Gathering online series. In non-Dharma life, Shante is an assistant professor of Black literature and culture at St. John's University here in Queens, New York, and they live in Brooklyn, New York with their dog Drala. So we all have sentient beings in our home. And the last line of Shante's bio just makes me a tiny bit sad to say, but it's true, that they will be living in Atlanta for the 2019-2020 academic year on a research fellowship at Emory University. So Dr. Smalls, I'm going to let you take it away for a while.
Thanks, Ethan. What do I do? What's the
We're
format?
going to talk about the Heart Sutra, if you would do that with us.
I will. I just wanted to know, is there meditation that happens?
We've been doing Tonglen meditation at the beginning, which you're free to guide, or we could do something else.
Okay. Why don't we do Tonglen? But first, let's because if you'll, so this is not Drala behind me. This is Archie. Archie is a foster dog. I just got on, and he's is in a wheelchair, but right now he's in his cart. So I'm hoping that you'll join me in doing the Heart Sutra at some point tonight. And so let's just take our seats first. And by this time, you all are experts in shamatha, peaceful abiding, or calm abiding, or just resting with the feeling of your body breathing. And before we even begin to meditate, we can feel the dignity of just taking our seat. And then we can just scan our body and mind and emotions. How am I doing? And when we're ready, with our soft gaze ahead of us, maybe about the length of our body, upright spine, soft front. We can just begin to feel the body breathing. And we'll sit like that for a little bit. So welcome back. Just want to first show you, well, first of all, I want to say thank you to Ethan for the invitation to be a part of your, can everyone hear me? Great. To be a part of your class. I know y'all have been together for a number of months. And so thank you for inviting me into your mandala, your container. I'm zooming in from the traditional land of the Canarsie tribe, unceded territory. It's all known as Brooklyn and Queens. And I'm feeling a lot of gratitude to be able to talk about the Heart Sutra with, you know, whatever I have to offer. And I'm particularly struck because I too, for the last year, have been really reading a lot of, I've been rereading the sutras, the Buddhist sutras from beginning in alphabetical order, and they're sometimes quite dry and boring. And this is, thank goodness for interpretations and for commentary, you know. And I've been actually rereading The Way of the Bodhisattva and really appreciating Shantideva's teachings. And it was really wonderful to actually read this translation of or commentary and translation of the Heart Sutra from Thich Nhat Hanh. It was like a breath of fresh air. It was so open and so clear and so welcoming and so inviting. So first, I just want to show you a little mini tanka, a little mini painting rendering that I have hanging of Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, the compassion. I don't know if you can see that. It's a little tiny. And so it actually looks a little bit like Frida Kahlo. And in this depiction, this small depiction that I have hanging on my part of my shrine, Avalokiteshvara, as many of you have probably seen, is depicted. Well, first of all, that one of the interesting things about the Bodhisattva, one of the three main Bodhisattvas, one of the Buddha's protectors, actually. Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva of compassion. Manjushri, the Bodhisattva of wisdom, and Vajrapani, the Bodhisattva of power. So those are like kind of the three protectors of the Buddha's teachings. But Avalokiteshvara is interesting for many reasons. One of them is that depending on the country and time and teaching, Avalokiteshvara would appear in different embodiments, in different, we could say, sexed or gendered embodiments. And in a way that kind of leads me into talking about this idea about the embodied quality of emptiness, the changing, right? The quality that emptiness, or as I like to say, spaciousness, the changeability of that, the non-fixation, even in something as material as the body, as earthy as the body. Avalokiteshvara, depending on the painting or depiction, is often, this one is depicted with many arms, but also is sometimes depicted with many heads and many eyes, so that the Bodhisattva Mahasattva can see, help, and look sort of 360 degrees and be of compassionate assistance wherever is needed, right? So many heads, many eyes, many arms. So I just wanted to, you can look up, there are many different depictions, but I just wanted to show you the one I have. So I think I wanted to start just by first reading from just a little tidbit. I'm not gonna rehash Thich Nhat Hanh's really beautiful words, and we are gonna use and then chant the, and if none of you have done it, just fake it till you make it, the Nalanda translation of the Heart Sutra. But I just wanted to read this little portion that I really love the theory of interbeing that Thich Nhat Hanh came up with, but I just want to talk about this. I want to just read this one passage on 45 at the last page of the Mark of Emptiness, which is interesting to think about. What is emptiness's mark? What is the mark of spaciousness or awareness? So the subtitle is All Phenomena Are Empty. Not only the human body, but all phenomena are empty of permanent separate self. So we're, as Ethan wrote a book on it, we're interdependent, or as Thich Nhat Hanh says, we're interbeing, we're intertwined. There is no, in the Buddha Dharma, but also in many mystical traditions, and many, the mystical aspect of many world religions, including, very, what we think of as perhaps as very established religions, that there's no separation from sacred and secular, or sacred and profane on the ultimate level. And that that lack of separation, well, the fact that we forget that there's a lack of separation, that there's no separation, is what causes, maybe we could say, all the problems in the world, all the suffering in the world, is that we can cause self because we think there is a self and other on an ultimate level. Okay. In the Heart Sutra, Avalokiteshvara is teaching this insight to Shariputra. So Shariputra, there's many things you can say about Shariputra, but one of my favorite things that someone said about him was that he was the one who asked kind of the dumb questions. But because he asked the questions, wisdom was always, whether he was asking a question of the Buddha or Avalokiteshvara or Ananda or someone else, because he was the one who wasn't afraid to ask questions, great teachings emerged. He just was always asking questions. And part of it had to do was because he had some different training. He wasn't really a Mahayana person. He was trained in more the Abhidharma, Dharma. And so he was learning, even though he was this great practitioner. He was learning, really, as the Buddha and other teachers were teaching in this second cycle of major teachings. So he's teaching Shariputra in this context. Avalokiteshvara represents the intention of Mahayana, the great vehicle, to restore the original teaching of the Buddha on the emptiness of all phenomenon, which, here we go, whereas Shariputra represents the Abhidharma, the stratified and analytical teachings that had come to dominate the Buddhist philosophy, like the Sarastivada. So sometimes our intellectual acumen takes over and occludes or blocks this kind of embodied experience and knowledge of empty but luminous, empty but full of potential, spacious like the sky, right? Sometimes in non-Asian, Western Buddhist context, we hear the word emptiness and we think, or at least I can speak for myself, at first think nothing, blank, devoid, right? And Thich Nhat Hanh does a great job with the paper example, right? Of not only bringing us to understand all the causes and conditions that came to make paper, the sun, the clouds, the rain, the tree, the leaves, the logger, but that even what is unborn is full of potential, right? Because it's coming from other non-separate arisings. Luminosity, arising, action. So like a room that hasn't been decorated is empty but luminous. Right? So I'm just going to read a little bit, actually, in relation. The Nalanda Translation Committee has a really great, some great commentary and explanation of terms, and it's actually a great way to sort of teach. So first, I'm going to just give you the setting, which is that they're in this place called Rajagriha, and it's a town in Northeast India, and they're at Vulture Peak Mountain. So with this great host of a Sangha community of practitioners, of monks and bodhisattvas, realized beings. And Vulture Peak Mountain is where the first teachings on Mahayana teachings or Shunyata teachings, the emphasis on emptiness, were given. So this is an important place, right in the near of this town of Rajagriha. So the sutra, as you all know by now, probably, has to do with the kind of doctrinal or scriptural aspect. And the translation that, so these are the Buddha's words, the words of the Buddha, that take the form of a dialogue. And you could say that one of the reasons that this is called the Heart Sutra, well, one, it actually can open your heart, right? But it is one of the shortest sutras. It's very pithy, it's very short, but you could have a class on this for the whole year. And that this aspect of transcendent knowledge relates to the very thing that Thich Nhat Hanh named his book after, The Other Shore. And I was thinking about this. I was like, where is the other shore? When later we do the sutra, the Heart Sutra, and we say the mantra, the mind protection, and also the mind protection. The heart is the seat of the mind. The translation that is given is a really great one. It's a little different from Thich Nhat Hanh. It's a little different from the actual traditional translation. I'm gonna look at it. The traditional translation of Gate Gate Paragate, Gate Gate Paragate Parasamgate Bodhisvaha. One of the translations here is gone, gone, gone beyond, gone utterly beyond. Oh, what awakening. What an awakening. That's an interesting translation. Gone, gone, gone beyond, gone utterly beyond. Oh, what an awakening. Svaha sometimes means like, so be it. May it be so. And we'll talk a little bit about the translation in the Londa Translation Committee, but I just wanted to give you that. Okay, so we're a whole bunch of people gathered, sitting there, monks, a few nuns, I think, too, bodhisattvas. And it said that Ananda is always the one who says, "Thus have I heard." Ananda, one of Buddha Shakyamuni's first students. And then this recounting. So we have Avalokiteshvara, Shariputra, Shakyamuni Buddha, and then Ananda and other folks. The other shore. It, to me, is this synergy or marrying or coming together of arising and dissolving, and not having a preference for either one, and really having an experience of arising and dissolving, or emptiness, spaciousness, and luminosity. That's not about being weird, about being better than other people, about being not in the world, but is about it being able to inhabit emptiness, luminosity in our everyday life as our practice. And really, we can only get there through practice. It's not we can't think our way there. And so the other shore is a way, I think, of talking about clear seeing, insight, and a release of attachment to things having to be fixated a certain way in order to enjoy life, actually. And I want to say, pathically difficult, lonely, painful. And the vow, the Bodhisattva vow, which you've talked about, I'm sure. When when Shanti Deva says, what have I done? what have I done by taking this vow? What have I actually committed myself to? It is this practice and living that's about working with other sentient beings. So the movement from the transition from not away from self-discipline, but the additive. We've got self-discipline in the Hinayana, the narrow vehicle, or Theravadan school. Then we add compassion practices, right? Which are about emptiness. The reason we can be compassionate is because we realize we are interbeing, interconnected, empty of self-separation. And the compassion practices, actually, compassion, why Tonglen, which I didn't want to actually start with because I want us to actually do the Heart Sutra, and that's already sometimes it's a very jarring practice. The difference, say, between metta, loving kindness, and Tonglen is in Tonglen, we take whatever is arising without a preference for it being good or fixable, we take it in. But because we are empty of self-nature, ultimately, it doesn't get stuck. It passes through us, and we are able to, with our breath, our body, our intention, our mind, transform pain into wisdom. So we receive, sending and receiving and sending. We take in the pain of others, and with our heart, we transform it into wisdom. Okay. Question, empty of self-separation. We're not separate from others, right? There's not a self that's separate from, let's say, so now even neurobiologists, scientists are saying, oh, trauma, memory, habits are passed down in the genes, in the DNA. So we inherit the trauma, the wounds, the memories of people we've never met. How can we be separate, right? How can we be an individual entity if we, our DNA, our very on the cellular level, we contain multitudes, right? As Walt Whitman, that's Walt Whitman, right? Yeah. We contain multitudes, but in some systems of thought, you know, when Descartes said mind body split as the philosophical basis of Western thought, European thought, it cut and it devalued the body, and it also cut people from relationality with each other. That's ancient wisdom. That's indigenous to all beings that are on this earth. So yeah, dualism, but it's even something, okay, we'll get there. Okay. Okay. At that time, the Blessed One entered the Samadhi. He entered meditation, that found nation. And at that same time, while the Buddha, the awakened one, is in deep Samadhi, Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva, is practicing it, and he saw, right, empty of nature, particularly first with the 5 skandhas, the heaps. And then through the power of the Buddha, Shariputra asks his question. Here's his dumb question. How should a son or daughter of noble family train who wishes to practice the profound prajnaparamita? You know? And Avalokiteshvara says, okay, Shariputra, no problem. Even those from a noble family, right? Even those who are most, maybe might have most difficulty accessing these teachings because they're so pampered, right? I'm like reading the sutra itself. That's what I'm looking down. If they practice the profound prajnaparamita, Heart Sutra, and also the paramitas, 6 paramitas, generosity, discipline, patience, exertion, meditation, insight, or non-discriminating awareness, they will see. Avalokiteshvara's name is like, he's like the one who sees, you know. We'll see. If they practice, they will see. So the seeing comes from practice. The insight, the awareness of this truth comes from practice. Right? You'll see the 5 skandhas, the 5 heaps, to be empty of nature. And then here we go with these nice little paradoxes. Form is emptiness. Okay, that makes sense. I can break myself down to different parts. Okay. But emptiness itself is also a form. Awareness, the room, right? The potential, spaciousness gives rise to form. They're not separate. Emptiness is no other than form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, he goes through the sense perceptions. And he's going through all these teachings, right? He'll go through the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, the six sense organs, the 12 sense perceptions, the 18 sense fields, before he says this beautiful mantra. So he goes through undoing, not undoing, but emptying, saying all these things, great arhats, great Theravadan practitioners, all these things you learn in the Mahayana teachings, in shunyata, in emptiness, these things have no inherent, there's no, you can't rely on them. You can't rely on taming your senses in order to get somewhere, because in emptiness, there is no, at the ultimate level, there is no eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, right? There is no birth and cessation, impurity, decrease, increase. It's empty, but luminous, right? We don't have to worry about old age and death, suffering, the truth of suffering, origin of suffering, cessation of suffering, and the liberation in emptiness. There's nothing to attain. So I'm sure many of you have heard this story that it is said when this teaching was explicated by Avalokiteshvara, maybe this is why it's called the Heart Sutra, that the arhats had heart attacks and died. That the teachers who've been practicing the words of the Buddha, they've been practicing his teachings. When he said, ah ha ha ha, here's some that they, so I don't know if they literally had died, or that if that's a analogy for fixation and refusal. And this is why we have different schools of practice. And it's not because one is better than the other. It has to do, I think, this is how I've been explaining it to myself and to students. First of all, monastics, or people who practice meditation all the time for the benefit of the world, even if they're quote unquote just Theravadan, that's bodhisattva activity, because they are practicing ahimsa, doing no harm, and they're really practicing for those of us who only practice for whatever, a number of minutes, 10, 30, 40, or 60 minutes. They're practicing for hours and months and years. So that's for us. It's for the world, right? And one of the differences in the yanas, besides the emphasis, right? Self-discipline, emptiness, luminosity, and then when you get to Vajrayana teachings, you'll find out what that's all about. The emphasis has to do with two things, or the difference has to do with two things, I would say. One has to do with speed of wakefulness. So it is said that the narrow vehicle takes many, many lifetimes, right? You do shamatha, and that takes a little bit longer because you're working so much with self-discipline, with polishing the stone, with, and shamatha is grinding, right? It's a grind. And receding usually from the worldly phenomena and sense perceptions. In Mahayana, it's because you are saying, okay, I'm going to work with work, family, the subway, traffic, taxes, bills, other people. That's my path as a householder or as a bodhisattva. And I'm going to put those beings first before my own wakefulness. Right? So the bodhisattva not only commits to the wakefulness of others, but that every being wakes up before you. And that's for every lifetime. And so there's a speeding up of the wakefulness, the possibility to wake up, because there's more responsibility. It gets a little bit more dangerous. It gets a little bit more challenging. Some of us, including me, are pretty great by ourselves. Oh wow, look at me, I'm so wakeful. I can sit, relax, everything's great. Oh, the dog's whining. You're ruining my meditation, The train's going by, someone's noisy, someone thinks they're a DJ, or whatever it is, whatever our thing is, it interrupts our little cocoon or our little, idea of our self-contained practice, and says, no, you have to work with others and the phenomena that comes in the world. That's your path. Family, your irritating parents or children or animals, or your irritating boss, neighbors. That's your path of wisdom. So though it's faster, more responsibility, right? Okay. And finally, Shariputra says, therefore, he gets to the pith of it with Shariputra, Avalokiteshvara says to Shariputra, therefore, since the bodhisattva is not trying to get anywhere, there's no attainment. The bodhisattva lives prajnaparamita. Lives, their very life wakes people up. And because the bodhisattva is not trying to get anywhere, it doesn't mean they don't attain something, but they're not trying to get anywhere. Because the bodhisattva is not trying to bodhisattva, is not trying to whammy people with, their wisdom. There's no fear of what's happening. There's no delusion about what's happening. There's no, oh, I'm gonna die. That sucks. I mean, it kind of does, but there's no sense that they have to do anything except be in this prajnaparamita situation, which is very challenging. And so the bodhisattva goes to the other shore, meaning transcends, it says here, transcends falsity and attains complete nirvana, goes to the other shore. All the Buddhas of the three times, by means of prajnaparamita, by means of this discipline, fully awaken to complete enlightenment. And that this mantra is said to be, although some people say the Lotus Sutra, but it's said to be because there's no deception, there's no grasping. It's just the simple truth. And then we say the mantra, the mind protection. Om is the seed syllable for the human. And then the translation here that the Nalanda Translation Committee gives is Om, gone, gone, gone beyond. So similar to the one I read before. Gone, complete, sorry. Gone, gone, gone beyond, completely gone beyond. Awake. Svaha, so be it. Bodhi, awake. Svaha, so be it. Om, seed syllable. Om of human. Gate, gone, gone, gone beyond, completely gone beyond. Awake, so be it. May it be so. Avalokiteshvara ends. So, Shariputra, do this. Train this way. The Buddha gets up, comes out of meditation, says, great, that was amazing. One should practice this way. He gives his stamp of approval. And all the Tathagatas, or the Buddhas, the ones who have gone to the other shore, will rejoice. And then this is the part I love. It says, when the Blessed One had said this, Venerable Shariputra and noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, that whole assembly and the world with its gods, humans, asuras, and Gandhavaras rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One. And one of the things that was really fascinating to me is that in the Nalanda Translation Committee translation or commentary, they say that that line about starting with the whole assembly, gods, is that it includes all the 6 realms. So the gods, the jealous gods, humans, animals, the hungry ghosts, and the, why am I forgetting the last one?
Hell.
Hell, the hell beings, right, thank you. Gods, their lives are too great. The celebrities, Hollywood, they can't hear the teachings because everything's so great. It's like they're ballers. Why do they need to hear something about gone, gone, gone beyond? The jealous gods are like B-list. They're always looking at what the gods are doing, trying to get there. I'll skip over the humans. I'll come back to humans. The hungry ghosts are said to have big bellies, long necks, and a pin for a mouth. So they're always hungry, right? So people who are never get enough, right? Sometimes that's how you might depict addiction, disease of more. The beasts or the animals are just trying to like defecate and have sex and get food and kill and learn. They're just, you know, just in the very survival mode. And then the hell beings are just in so much suffering. And these are just, you can just think of these as states of mind, which perhaps all of us have experienced. The hell beings are suffering so much that they're consumed, they can't hear anything. But, oh, and the humans are said to be the perfect balance of these, in the perfect balance of these realms. So even though we may experience all these states, we can actually hear the teachings from time to time. But these teachings are so powerful that all the realms heard them. Everyone heard this, right? And rejoiced. So that's the power that can cut through our ignorance, our blissful ignorance, or our jealousy, our striving, our kind of grind, hustle mind, our grasping, or our just all-consuming suffering. This can cut through that and wake us up. I find that very beautiful and hopeful. I just love this, that the Gandharvas are celestial beings who play music, who get their sustenance from smell. Okay, that's great. All smell. So would you like to do the Heart Sutra?
Do you want me, Shante, to share it on the screen? The
That'd be
file?
great.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
We'll do that now.
So what you can do is just keep your microphones on mute, or else it'll be a disaster. And I will set the pace. So I'll sing the title weirdly as one does, and then I will say there's usually a drum in this particular translation. Thus have I heard, and then the assembly, meaning you all, will join in on once. So I'll give you you just listen to what I'm doing in terms to get the rhythm. So it's just simple. It's like, once the blessed one was dwelling in Raj. So it's very easy. It's not anything fancy. So I'll ring the gong. I'll say the title. I'll say, thus have I heard. You come in on once. And there'll be some times I'll ring the gong during the sutra. And that has to do with auspicious words, but also it's like a wakeful quality. The Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge. Thus have I heard, once the Blessed One was dwelling in Rajagriha at Vulture Peak Mountain, together with the great gathering of the Sangha of the great gathering of the Sangha of Bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One entered samadhi that expresses the Dharma, called profound illumination. And at same time, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, while practicing the profound prajna parami, in this way he saw 5 skandhas to be empty of nature. Then through the power of the Buddha venerable Shariputra said to noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should son or daughter of noble family train who wishes to practice the prajna paramita? Addressed in this way, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva said to Shariputra, O Shariputra, son, daughter of noble family who wishes to practice the profound prajna paramita, should see this way, seeing the 5 skandhas to be empty of nature. Form is emptiness, emptiness also is form. Emptiness is no other than form. Form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, perception, formation, consciousness are emptiness. The Shariputra, all dharmas are emptiness. There are no characteristics. There is no birth and no cessation. There is no impurity and no purity. There is no decrease, no increase. There Shariputra, in emptiness there is no form, feeling, no perception, no formation, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no dharmas, no I dot two up to, no mind dot two, no dot two of dharmas, no consciousness dot two, no ignorance, no end of ignorance up to, no old age and death, end of old age and death, no suffering, no origin of suffering, no cessation of suffering, no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since the Bodhisattvas have no attainment, they abide by means of prajna paramita, since no obscuration of mind, there is no fear. Falsity and attain complete nirvana, all the Buddhas, the 3 times by means of Prajnaparamita, fully awakened to unsurpassable true complete enlightenment. Therefore, the great mantra, Prajnaparamita, the mantra of great insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequal mantra, the mantra that calms all suffer, should be known as truth, since there is no deception. The Prajnapada to mantra is said in this way: Om Gate Gate Pada Samgate Buddhi Spaha. Thus, Putra the Bodhisattva Mahasattva should train in the profound Prajnapada Mita. Then the Blessed One arose that samadhi and praise noble Avalokiteshvara, the Sattva Mahasattva, saying, good, O son of noble family, thus it is. Noble family, thus it is. One should this the profound Prajnapada Mita, just as you have taught, and all the Tathagatas will rejoice. The Blessed One had said this, venerable Shariputra and noble Avalokiteshvara, Bodhisattva Mahasattva, that whole assembly and the world with its gods, humans, Suras, and Gandharvas, rejoice and praise the words of the Blessed One. Just sit and feel that in your body. Whew, okay. Was that okay? Medium? Bad? Okay, pretty good. So I'd love to this is a touch, right? A soft little taste. It's not comprehensive, and I'll there's of course the Thich Nhat Hanh's book, which is really excellent. And I can also send you some. There's a Nalanda Translation Committee commentary, which I can Ethan or Adriana can include. And there's a really cool little commentary from this sutra site that collects all the Buddha sutras. I'm happy to send that too. Are there any questions? Can you speak to the Datus? Yes, I can. Who's that? Dusty? I don't know. I can't see you, Dusty. I'm sorry. I can see your name. What would you like to know about? Is that you? Okay. What would you like to know about the Datus, Dusty?
Well, in studying the Heart Sutra, it's always been hard for me to wrap my head around exactly what the Datus mean. Everything is pretty, I feel like everything is pretty clear and straightforward, but the Datus, even speaking with my meditation instructor, we weren't able to lock down a solid explanation of that. This is what this is. And I think it might be the process of understanding, like the interpretation of what the eye might see, the interpretation of what the ears hear. So would Datu be sort of an interpretation?
Okay. Yes, this is a good question. So it's these are the, okay. There are 18 Datus, so this is really fun. So if you back up and you start with the sense organs, right? The 6 sense organs. We know there are more than 6 senses, but let's just, eye, ear, nose, right? Touch, sound, smell, taste. So those are we have those organs, right? And then from there, you have the perceptions or the ayatanas that are connected, the 12 ayatanas are connected to the senses, right? So the way, the eye, and then the seeing, and right? So the sense organs, and then the sense objects. Object of the senses: seeing, hearing, tasting. And then the consciousnesses associated with the six sense organs, the six sense perceptions. Those 18 things: organs, sense perceptions, consciousness related to the organs. That's the dhatus. All of that together. So it's that whole mishigash of organs, perception, and then the consciousness or the meaning we make out of it. Dhatu. Sense awareness, you could say, but including, it's based on organs, perception, and then consciousness. That's the dhatus together. Does that make sense?
So it's a bundle.
it's a you get cable, Wi-Fi, and telephone, right? So it's that whole, you could say it's a world making, right? The organs in of themselves are just like gelatin, little big weird eyes, and just this flesh, but then we have objects that we have information, data, raw data, and then our consciousness makes sense of that and also makes narrative related to that. So that whole process, dhatu.
Yes, I understand that better. Thank you.
Welcome. Great question.
Thank you.
I will say, okay, the cat is awesome. Looking out the window in the yellow shirt, your cat is amazing. I do this every day, the Heart Sutra. And when I first started doing it, before I became before I took the Bodhisattva vow, so before I had practices related to this, I just loved this. I love the drumming, and I love the kind of premise of this, right? That through practice, I could actually see clearly and not be so attached to my idea of self and my desires, my likes and dislikes. But when I started having bodhisattva practices like Lojong and loving kindness and Tonglen, and the bodhisattva vow became part of my life, and that really shifted my consciousness. This took on a really much more. It felt like this was like a power up for the day, because it's very challenging to do bodhisattva activity. It's very hard. And depleting. Plus, I live in New York, so it's like double. But this sutra is so powerful as a practice, and it's particularly powerful in an assembly with a group of people. It's like unbelievable how that feels. So we did it. We weren't hearing each other, but I could feel y'all, which is really great.
Hello. Can you hear me? Hi. I'm very, very grateful for your sharing. I was wondering if you can maybe talk a little about what you said, that when the mind-body split happened in Western thought and the body was sort of devalued, we also were cut off from relationality or something like that. Can you say a little more about that?
Yes.
Thank you.
You could say, and you can really trace this from Descartes on in terms of in philosophy, in European continental philosophy, that the valuation on thinking and the mind, right, which is not the brain, but the mind, the overvaluing of thinking, of thought, of mind consciousness, and that the body was simply this thing, you know, that, you know, carried around the mind, right? And when you are, for those of us who've ever been in obsessive thought, when you're trapped in thought, or you're overvaluing your thought, or you believe everything you think, there's a way that you don't experience the wisdom that comes from other parts of your existence. There's intelligence in the body, right? For instance, pain is intelligence. The skin, you know, which has almost, you know, second most nerves in all of the body system, has intelligence, right? So there's a kind of way that when the mind is valued, and the processes of the mind are valued not as integrated, right, but as this separate thing, it emphasizes and encourages separation from other people, right? Because you're already separated from yourself. There's already this split of like, the body has to be tamed, right? The body is impure and it's weak, and you know, some of that's based on some other ancient texts of like the flesh being weak and all this stuff, and it gives into temptation and it falls apart and it's like gross and it poops and whatever. But the mind, right, is pristine. And so there was an antagonistic relationship between the mind and the body. It wasn't simply separate, but an antagonism. This is actually similar to forms of thought that were happening in ancient India before the Buddha came along. And it was like the consciousness could just like leap from body to body, and that was what was valued, right? And then the little self would be reunited with the Brahman self. And the Buddha said, no. You got to work with this whole situation here. So I think when you have an antagonist, a view of antagonism with your own body, when you decide that other people, so then, you know, then this is like when the categorization of a hierarchy of human, so European thought was, we have the best thought, then divisions of humans, and saying, oh, those people are more associated with the body, right? That was what Africa was considered more associated with the body, even though, of course, Greek philosophy comes from African philosophy. But that's why you can have a system of devaluation, because, oh, those people are associated with the body, that's what they're good for. Let's use their bodies to build our society. Right? Or in the further east, those people are too, they have too many rituals, right? So that's what was said about the farther east. They have too many rituals. They're too weird, right? They're too invested in, why they bow all the time, you know? Why does everything have a ceremony, right? Oh, those people in those other weird islands and those weird lands, what's now the United States or all the Americas, they're savage. So this separation of first aggression towards the self translated to aggression towards others on a global scale. And then became categorization of humans as, we're the mind and the mind is the top. And then, you know, on the farthest end, those people are the body, right? So they have no mind life. This creates incredible disembodiment. I've heard 3 people say this in the last week in different ways, totally unrelated. They don't know each other. But disembodiment leads to violence. Because if I'm not in my body, if I don't actually experience my own pain and limits, I can't actually have empathy. I can't do Tonglen if I'm not in the body, right? I can't actually co-experience, which is what Tonglen practice is about. I can't co-experience another person's pain if I'm not actually embodied. This is why sometimes Tonglen is hard for non-Asian Westerners, Buddhist practitioners, because it's a shock to a disembodied experience. And last night, I was doing my final sort of like, yes, right? The oddly enough, it's called the enlightenment, but it's an enlightenment. It's a light bulb going up in the mind rather than a experience of non-duality or experience of lack of separation. And I was thinking about, I was like sort of doing my last minute notes and reading, thinking, and I just kept coming back to this experience of the body, right? And partly because I was actually hearing the drum in the Heart Sutra. And the drum is like a very basic human communication, that you feel the vibrations in the body. And so this sutra is not only meant to be practiced as, or like studied as a kind of like theoretical or philosophical. It's meant to be practiced as a practice, but also meant to be experienced. Imagine all 40 something of us saying this in a room together, the kind of embodiment that enforces or underscores, or just, it calls you to your body. And so I think the kind of, when we disassociate from our body through a philosophical tradition or through, family, through societal messages, meditation is actually, in the 4 foundations of mindfulness, it's like mindful of body is one of the foundations. And there's a forgetting that it's actually through this vehicle that we can actually only experience emptiness through the body. Interestingly enough, because first you experience solidity, right? And you the deception of the eye consciousness, deception of misperception, right? Mishearing, misseeing, missing the point. You experience the pain of that, and then you can sometimes touch the experience of not of spaciousness, of shunyata, of emptiness, of possibility, of holding, which is super hard anyway, but also partly because of the speediness of the world right now. So was that helpful, Ernesto?
Yes, it was very, very nice. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Looking at the things you're saying in the notes. Giving birth, it's a quote from Ta-Nehisi Coates, rhythmic translate. I've been exploring, is the Heart Sutra speaking to the 6th paramita specifically, or perhaps all the rest are also included? That's from Hunt. I would say has to be all. The paramitas are, I mean, I think it's all, right? Because there's no skip. It's the 6 paramitas together, right? Those practices and insight. Sometime so I'll just say my experience has been both in my own practice and observing others and in talking to students that there's a real pull, and I think it comes from a very genuine place of our inner Buddha is like wants to wake up. And I think there's a real pull to go right to insight, right? To this kind of all-knowing awareness. But one of the things I love about the paramitas is that they each help us. They each help us. Like the practice of generosity is helps us wake up, because each of us is generous in some or areas of our life and really ungenerous in others. Some people are really generous with money and very ungenerous with their thoughts. Some people are very generous with their time, but not with their money. And so when one really begins to practice generosity, and they say generosity is, all of these paramitas actually bring us joy. They say discipline brings joy, but all of them, the process of learning how to be generous toward ourselves, towards other people, is a practice in itself that begins to show us this non-separation and lead and give us experiences of emptiness, luminosity, right? And same with patience, exertion, right? Meditation, all of them are needed. And the Heart Sutra, you could say, is a pithy way of experiencing those qualities. You know, there's meditation all over this. Avalokiteshvara has so much patience with Shariputra. This is the generosity of teaching, first of all, right? And the exertion that goes into that. So I think we're talking about all of these things, then all of a sudden we are like, oh, I'm in insight, right? Because there's actually, because you're working with mindfulness first, placing one's attention on an object of meditation, the mindfulness, as you strengthen your mindfulness, it strengthens your awareness, right? So as you practice all the paramitas, the Heart Sutra is a in itself is a prajna paramita. As you practice, you wake to these, you begin to pulsate, it gets juicy. So I want to emphasize all of, yes, I think it's all of the paramitas. What have you in your explorations, what have you stumbled upon? Okay, thank you. I don't have a lot of time. How much time do we have for questions?
We usually end around 10 minutes to the hour, and then have sort of closing aspiration and announcements. So we could do a few more questions, or however you want to use the next 20 or so minutes.
I would love to hear more questions or people's experience with doing the Heart Sutra. If you've just now, or if you've never done it before, or if you've done it before, I'm really interested in that.
I have a question. Hi. Yeah, so when you were talking about the path of the Bodhisattva earlier, you were saying that it's lonely and painful and difficult and terrible and awful.
Not terrible and awful, but
you didn't say that part. I wrote the other stuff down.
Yeah, the first three, definitely, yes.
Yeah, but then now you were also and juicy, which shouldn't it be awesome and fun? I mean, I guess the point is like you know, as opposed to like the neuro vehicle, that seems really boring kind of, but like now you're connecting with others and you're helping and you're, you know, there's a lot of pain involved, but I don't know, can you speak to like why you said it was lonely, painful, and difficult, I guess?
Because it's true.
Yeah, sure. I mean,
True.
all of it's kind of lonely, painful.
It's both. It's both. And I think the bodhisattva develops a taste for no preference, but doesn't deny the experience of loneliness, of difficulty, and of pain. And then at the same time that's happening, I know this is hard sometimes to fathom, but we've all had this experience in life. At the same time that is churning, the joy, the sense of freedom, that's all happening too. The juiciness. So it's both. It's emptiness, luminosity. It's happening at the same time. It's both real. And I think the reason I said it like that at first was because I think it's important to know what we're getting ourselves into, you know? I like to say that when we talk about the 3 jewels, you know, the Buddha as an example, awesome. The Dharma as our teachings, and, you know, amazing. The Sangha as our community of practitioners, because the Sangha is an irritant. And the Sangha is where we actually brush up against our limits, but also against the other people's limits, conflict, society, harm, love and breakups, like and dislike, preference and aversion. So all of that, because it's a society, because it's a community of practitioners, I like these cookies, you like those cookies, right? And so the practice is right there, and many times it falls out because people are either too nicey, or they're off in la la land being so spiritual, or they're like super cruel. And so actually bringing your practice to society, your Sangha, it's like this conventional thing because it's easy and expedient. That's hard. And then forget about the Sangha. What about people who are just, at work, and you're like, not this irritating person again, just, I hate them. And then you remember something just sparks and you're like, ugh. And so I think it requires a lot of heart. It requires a lot of communal care. It requires a kind of, this is where the paramita of patience comes in, like not beating yourself up. And there is a quality, there's a poignancy and a tenderness and a brokenheartedness to, it's not just helping, it's being available.
Yeah.
Whew. Okay, I'll give you an example. Little Archibald here. So I have a dog, Drala. I've had Drala for a long time. She's 9.5. I sent her away like for the last week and a half to camp upstate because she can't. The fireworks are like send her into a panic, and she has like really bad anxiety and pants, and it's a little scary for her. And they're insane in my neighborhood. It's like M80s. I don't even know what's going on. It's lunacy. So through the power of the internet, I discover, CBD. Believe me, I've got everything. Thunder shirts, CBD. Thank you. It don't work. So anyway, mutt muffs. So through the power of the internet, Archie was his previous owner was going to put him down because he felt he was at his limits with having a disabled dog. Archie's in a wheelchair. He had a fall earlier this year and injured his spine, and the owner was gonna put him down. So someone, and he's healthy, he just, he can't walk on his own. So someone who has a dog in a wheelchair, anyway, I said, I'll take him, I'll foster him until we can find something. So it was very, like, I totally had the time for it, the room for it, all that stuff. But I have to help him pee and poop like 4 times a day. So there's a kind of, like, when you have pee and like dog shit on your hands, it's not as glamorous as, oh, he's so cute, look at this Instagram picture, oh, we're so cute, post yoga, which I took a picture of. And then it's like the rest of the time is pee and poop and cleaning up blood and helping him do this and getting him in the chair, which takes 10 minutes, and strapping him in, and then doing the exercises. And there's a effort, and there's so much work to being available to help others. And it can sometimes feel like you're the kid in the bubble missing out on life, right? Because you're actually exchanging your life for others. And it's not anything it's not codependency or anything like that. You have boundaries and limits and all that stuff, but there is a kind of thing is like, I'm giving my life to this. Without my permission, this has happened to me, Katie.
Yeah.
Without my permission, all of a sudden, my life has become about Dharma and other people. And sometimes I hate it because I just want to go back to the matrix, be inserted back into the matrix. But then the joy and the kind of realization that I gain from working with my own, it helps me wake up. It's the friction helps me wake up, So that's why I say, because it's the whole, it's like blood and guts, you know what I mean? It's beautiful, but it's also gelatinous, and it's bile, it's like Thich Nhat Hanh was talking about, it's all of it. It's the bile, and it's the, your nice teeth or whatever. It's not just the pretty parts, it's the whole. Let me switch up my hold on.
Can people hear me now? Okay, great.
Yes.
I need to take out my AirPods. That's not to discourage you from the path. It's just to say it's the whole shebang. It's the whole shebang. And it's all material. You can work with it all, but it's the whole thing. It's the whole thing.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe one more question, or one or two. Yes. Oh, you all are so smart. Lucky enough to do this Heart to with Ethan and Nepal. Wow. Super popular in China. Yes. Ooh, and then you went to Vulture Peak Mountain. Wow. Chanting in Chinese. That's amazing. Sorry, I'm plugging in my computer. It's very powerful. Yeah, this is a very popular chant. I don't feel qualified to help others since I haven't figured out my own friction. Well, guess what? I mean, that may be some wisdom speaking, but we also can we can give from where we are, or we can help from where we are. What prompted me to start chanting the Heart Sutra daily? Ego. So there's this chant book that I got many years ago. It has many, many chants in it. And, you know, you have to pick and choose or else I'll just be here all day chanting. And I really liked that chant. I had heard it. I had heard it in Zen when I was practicing Zen, but it's a little different. And then I had heard it in Shambhala. In SGI, they really do the Lotus Sutra, actually. But so I'd heard it in Shambhala, and I was like, I really like this. But here's the thing. Let me restate that. When I was drawn to the Heart Sutra, I didn't know the rhythm, so I was saying it in this crazy way, and like crying and doing a lot of dramatics. Just the words really spoke to me. And then I remember being at like a feast or some event and hearing it and with the drum, and I was like, it was like mind blowing. It felt really good. And so then I started incorporating it into my daily practice. And then it fell out for a while because I was doing other chants and I was trying to like consolidate. And really in the last year, I have felt the need to return to some very, for me, foundational text. So I also do, I take my refuge vows in the morning. Like I do the refuge practice in the morning. And I do a number of chants, including the Heart Sutra. And the Heart Sutra feels very, I think I said this before, it feels very energizing. Like I feel like it reminds me of non-duality, but also of emptiness, luminosity. It reminds me of possibility when I get discouraged. Because I get discouraged, you know? And so it's a way, it rouses in me it rouses my energy. And it gives me energy to be in the world as authentically as possible. Yeah, so that's why thank you. One more, and then I'll turn it over to aspirations and announcements.
If there's anyone who feels like you've been leaning back and you want to work with this step up, step back, this would be a great chance to ask a question or share an insight. Okay. So I'll save thank yous for a moment. I'm going to bring up in the share space our closing, our 7-day meditation vow for those who'd like to make a commitment to daily practice, as well as the 4 great Bodhisattva vows from Soto Zen that we've been closing with. We have 2 more weeks in this third course. We're going to be going deeper into the paramitas, and that question and exchange between Hunt and Shantae. That's my understanding too. That specifically, you could say that this is about the 6th paramita, if you wanted to be specific, the Prajna paramita. But that's kind of considered the ultimate paramita, that it includes the view from which all the others arise. So we're not going to, as we go through the 6 paramitas, we're not going to focus too much more on Prajna paramita, because this was the night where we went into that as an overarching premise. Next week, we're going to be talking about patience paramita, and then exertion. And patience is really about how the Bodhisattva works with anger. So that'll be a great discussion. And then we have 2 weeks off after that, and then the Tantra course begins August 13th. So we do have class this Saturday for those of you who want to join the sitting group. And I think that's everything. So I wanted to just say the thank you, and then I'll call up to the save screen our closing aspiration to dear friend and colleague, Dr. Shante Smalls. Thanks so much for joining Online Buddhist Studies and teaching about the Heart Sutra. And yeah, it's anytime you want to come back, just shove your way in. That's the way this will work. And we'll both bring our cute sentient beings and then, talk about the Dharma. So that being said, maybe we can just take our seat one more time, and I'll share the 7-day vow and the 4 great vows of Zen. I also wanted to offer that if you do want to begin your meditation session this week with reciting the Heart Sutra, that could be a really great practice to come from what we've learned tonight. So that's a great way to begin a meditation session. Okay, so the 7-day vow. I, Ethan, with confidence in the benefits of a regular practice of sitting meditation, do hereby commit for myself and no one else to practicing at least one session of sitting meditation for as short or as long a period of time as I am willing and able for each of the next 7 days. 4 great vows. Sentient beings are numberless. I vow to save them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to put an end to them. The dharmas are boundless. I vow to master them. The Buddha way is unattainable. I vow to attain it. Okay. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Dr. Shante Smalls. And we will see you all either Saturday or next Tuesday for week 7. Okay? Good night.